Are the days of big upfront payouts and bonuses for LIV Golf over? There's a new report that just dropped that seems to indicate that they are. And more importantly, if they are, what does that really mean going forward for the league in general?
Everything you think you know about LIV Golf is wrong. It's not a viable competitor to the PGA Tour. It's not revolutionizing professional golf. And it's definitely not surviving because the business model works. It's surviving because Saudi Arabia has decided that something is worth $500 million in annual losses.
The LIV Golf Tour is hemorrhaging money. This is not a surprise. Estimates are, since their inception, they've lost anywhere from $1.1 to $1.4 billion.
And by the end of this, one sentence buried in regulatory filings completely destroys the narrative that LIV was ever anything more than an expensive distraction. Brooks Koepka walked away from LIV Golf in December 2025 with a year left on his contract worth more than $100 million. He cited family reasons after his wife suffered a miscarriage. The global travel schedule no longer aligned with his priorities. The league issued a gracious statement. Everyone moved on politely. What nobody said publicly was what the move actually meant. One of the circuit's 5 biggest stars had just decided that finishing his guaranteed deal wasn't worth it anymore.
That LIV, and he didn't identify who, had told these stars that as we get closer to renegotiating these contracts that are coming to an end, we're not going to be negotiating them with these huge upfront payouts.
That doesn't happen when things are going well. The announcement came through carefully crafted PR. Koepka thanked LIV for the opportunity. Livy wished him well. The press coverage focused on family and personal decisions. But underneath the diplomatic language sat a more uncomfortable reality.
First player to ever reach 5 wins on LIV Golf, Brooks Koepka has decided he's no longer going to be playing on LIV. And he is shutting it down and saying, I need to spend more time with my family. I'm out. I thought the reason you went to LIV was to spend more time with your family.
A player with millions of dollars still owed on his contract had chosen to walk away. Not because he was forced out, not because he violated terms, because staying wasn't worth it anymore, even with guaranteed money on the table. At the same time those exit conversations were happening, accountants in the United Kingdom were filing routine financial disclosures for LIV Golf Limited. The numbers told a story nobody at LIV wanted publicized. $461 million in losses for 2024 alone. Not since inception, not projected over 10 years.
The LIV Golf Tour is hemorrhaging money. This is not a surprise. Estimates are, since their inception, they've lost anywhere from $1.1 to $1.4 billion.
In one calendar year running 7 international tournaments, they burned through nearly $500 million. Behind the scenes, the pattern was already established. $243 million in losses for 2022, $396 million for 2023, $461 million for 2024. Total international losses exceeded $1.1 billion, and that's only the UK entity. The American operation doesn't file public reports. Most people miss what happened next, and that's where the question nobody wants to answer becomes unavoidable. What does Saudi Arabia actually get for those losses? Because when LIV Golf launched in June 2022, the pitch was revolution.
To give the players an opportunity to create generational wealth. Just look at Bryson DeChambeau today. If he didn't come to LIV, he wouldn't have his IP to do what he's doing on YouTube. Massive, massive account for him. I'm so happy for Bryson DeChambeau, but that only happened because we gave him that right.
54 holes instead of 72. Team formats with franchise value, shotgun starts and music festivals, private jets and 9-figure signing bonuses. The sports establishment would be forced to adapt or collapse. The Saudi Public Investment Fund had $900 billion and unlimited patience. The merger would eventually happen and everyone who joined early would be vindicated. Every single assumption is being tested in real time. Phil Mickelson took $200 million. Dustin Johnson reportedly signed for $125 million. Bryson DeChambeau came over for $100 million plus. John Rahm joined in late 2023 for somewhere between $300 and $600 million. Brooks Koepka, Cam Smith, Sergio Garcia, all 9-figure deals. The star power was undeniable. The biggest names in golf had made the jump, but star power was supposed to translate into something. Television deals, sponsorship interest, audience growth, cultural momentum, the part where guaranteed contracts became viable businesses. That translation never happened the way it was supposed to.
So it was a business decision, first and foremost, and that's all there was to it. It's given me a lot more opportunity outside of the game of golf and giving me more time with my family and my future family.
LIV's broadcast arrangement with the CW network was structured as revenue sharing, not a rights fee. The league collected a percentage of advertising sold during broadcasts. The UK rights for the entire 2024 season generated $3.2 million. Not $300 million, $3.2 million. For an entire season of professional golf featuring some of the sport's biggest names. When LIV events aired on FS1 during 2025, they averaged 63,000 viewers. The PGA Tour's comparable windows drew 2.66 million. The competitive gap wasn't closing, and there's a number buried in those same UK filings that explains why it never will. CEO Scott O'Neill told reporters in 2025 that sponsorship values had grown by a factor of 10 under his leadership. He positioned this as evidence of momentum. The financial filings showed $17.1 million in international sponsorship revenue for 2024, even if that number jumped tenfold as claimed. The operational expenses of flying entire teams internationally with private jets and building temporary infrastructure at courses around the world consumed budgets no sponsor revenue could match. Publicly, everything looked aggressive. LIV was signing players, announcing new tournaments, expanding internationally, promising innovation. Privately, something else was developing. The league spent 2024 searching for a second broadcast partner to cover early round coverage. Nobody signed. Major networks passed. Streaming platforms declined. Regional sports networks showed no interest. By 2025, first-round coverage remained YouTube only, meaning 1/3 of LIV's content generated zero broadcast revenue. The system doesn't care about your star power, it only cares whether anyone watches. At that point, it looked sustainable. The Saudis kept writing checks. The players kept cashing them. The PGA Tour was supposedly panicking. The framework agreement announced in June 2023 would eventually force reconciliation. All LIV had to do was survive until the merger happened and legitimized everything. But that wasn't the end of it. The PGA Tour stopped needing LIV completely. That's the shift that changes everything. In early 2025, the tour announced a $3 billion strategic investment from private equity groups including Fenway Sports Group. The deal didn't require Saudi involvement, didn't need reconciliation with LIV, didn't depend on the merger talks that had dragged on for nearly 2 years. The PGA Tour found independent financing and moved forward without looking back. Television ratings improved 17% year over year on CBS. 14 new sponsorship deals worth $400 million came in during one quarter. The tour's media rights run through 2030 at $700 million annually. From the outside, this looks like competition. From the inside, it's devastation. Because every LIV player made a calculation. They assumed the tours would merge within 18 months. They believed the Saudis had infinite money and infinite patience and a master plan that would eventually force the PGA Tour to capitulate. They thought 9-figure contracts protected them from career consequences. They convinced themselves that guaranteed money plus eventual reconciliation equaled the perfect outcome. None of those assumptions survived contact with reality. The framework agreement fell apart piece by piece. The original deadline passed. Extensions came and went. President Trump brokered 2 White House meetings between PGA Tour leadership and Saudi officials in February 2025. Tiger Woods attended one session and declared things would heal quickly. The most influential voice in golf thought reconciliation was imminent. The optimism lasted approximately 6 weeks. By summer, negotiations had stalled completely. By fall, new LIV CEO Scott O'Neill told Reuters he and PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp weren't in serious talks. Not that talks were difficult, not that progress was slow, they weren't in serious talks. By December, everyone stopped pretending reunification was coming. And here's the detail nobody wanted to acknowledge. The detail that explains why Brooks Koepka walked away, why Bryson DeChambeau is building an independent YouTube empire, why Jon Rahm can't get back what he left behind. The UK financial filings included standard language about material uncertainty regarding the company's ability to continue as a going concern. That's regulatory terminology meaning the business cannot survive without external support. The directors cited the Public Investment Fund's letter of support as the only reason they could keep operating. Translation: without Saudi oil money, LIV Golf shuts down tomorrow. If you've been watching golf for decades, you know how this story ends. Almost immediately after Brooks Koepka left, the PGA Tour announced a returning member program. Any LIV player who had won a major or players championship between 2022 and 2025 could rejoin the tour with specific penalties, but immediate eligibility. The program only applied to 4 players: Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, and Cameron Smith. The window closed February 2nd, 2026. It was explicitly described as a one-time offer that would not be repeated. The PGA Tour was opening a door, but only for players who had proven their value by winning golf's biggest events while competing for LIV. Everyone else would have to wait longer, pay steeper penalties, or find another path back. The establishment was selecting which defectors deserved forgiveness based on championship credentials. Koepka was already back. The other 3 said no. For now, that sounds reasonable, until you see what Bryson DeChambeau actually said. Quote, "I'm contracted through 2026, so I'm excited about this year. Not, I'm committed to, not, this is where I want to be. Contracted through 2026. The moment his contract expires, his obligations end. And the PGA Tour just put a pathway in front of him. Quietly over the next 12 months, everyone will be doing the same calculation. Rahm's contract runs through 2028. DeChambeau's expires at the end of 2026. Smith hasn't publicly disclosed his terms. Every one of them watched Koepka walk away from guaranteed money and get immediately reinstated on the PGA Tour. Every one of them sees where this is heading. By the time anyone reacted to what the financial reality actually revealed, the damage was permanent. World ranking points became the clearest measure of irrelevance. LIV Golf still doesn't have official world golf ranking recognition. Players can't earn points in LIV events. They slowly drift down the rankings based purely on decay from previous accomplishments. Lower rankings mean fewer exemptions into major championships. Fewer majors mean less relevance in golf's historical record. You can earn $50 million per year and become completely invisible to the sport's legacy structure. The ranking system was designed to reflect competitive achievement. LIV's events didn't meet the criteria for point allocation. The league claimed the decision was political. The ranking organization cited technical requirements LIV hadn't satisfied. Regardless of the reason, the outcome was the same. Every week a player spent on LIV was a week their world ranking deteriorated, and world ranking determined access to the events that actually mattered for legacy. This is where careers quietly disappear. Bryson DeChambeau won the US Open in 2024. He's the biggest individual star LIV has. He generates millions of views on YouTube through his own content creation. He signed an apparel deal with Reebok covering his entire Crushers GC team. He's proved he can win majors while playing the LIV schedule, and he's openly discussing whether focusing on YouTube content and majors might be more viable than staying with LIV once his contract expires. That's not confidence in the product. That's an exit strategy being developed in real time. DeChambeau's YouTube channel has become bigger than his LIV career. The content he creates independently reaches more people than LIV's broadcasts. He's building a personal brand that exists separately from the league paying him. When his contract expires at the end of 2026, he'll have options that don't depend on LIV surviving. That's the calculation of someone who sees where this is heading. Jon Rahm joined LIV as the defending Masters champion in late 2023. He was ranked third in the world. He had publicly stated he'd never join LIV because he didn't like the format. Then the Saudis reportedly offered him between $300 and $600 million, and suddenly format preferences became negotiable. He earned $75 million over 2 seasons. He hasn't won a LIV event. He finished second 3 times, led the individual standings heading into the final events. The merger talks he supposedly joined to facilitate have completely collapsed. The PGA Tour doesn't need him back, and there's no clear path to reclaiming the career trajectory he left behind. Rahm's decision was presented as strategic. He'd help bridge the divide between tours. His presence would force reconciliation. The merger would happen and his move would be vindicated as forward-thinking rather than mercenary. None of that materialized. He's stuck on a circuit that can't get him world ranking points, playing in front of audiences that don't compare to what he left behind. And there's one question that still loops back to the beginning. What does Saudi Arabia actually get for losing $1 billion every 36 months? Yasir Al-Rumayyan, the PIF governor, attends LIV events. He plays in pro-am competitions alongside the stars his fund pays 9 figures. He's been described as golf-obsessed and personally invested in making LIV succeed. He sits in the gallery, he celebrates victories, he presents trophies, but he's never publicly addressed the financial reality buried in those UK filings, never explained the endgame beyond disrupting the PGA Tour, never articulated what success looks like when you're hemorrhaging $500 million annually. The silence suggests there's no answer that makes business sense, because if there was a coherent strategy beyond sports washing, someone would have articulated it by now. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has openly acknowledged that sports investments serve reputational purposes. Golf, soccer, Formula One, boxing. The kingdom is buying its way into global sports at every level. LIV Golf associates Saudi Arabia with premium entertainment. It provides access to influential figures in sports and business globally. It puts the Saudi flag on television screens in markets that matter. The cost is a rounding error relative to Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth. The Public Investment Fund manages $925 billion. They could sustain LIV's current burn rate for nearly 2,000 years before running out of money. Financial viability was never the requirement. Cultural penetration was the goal. And on that metric, LIV has partially succeeded. The Saudi name is now permanently attached to professional golf's recent history. But for the players, the calculation was supposed to be different. They took guaranteed money believing they were joining a viable competitor, that the team franchises would gain value, that the format innovations would attract audiences, that the merger would eventually legitimize their decision. The franchise model was supposed to create equity value that would eventually justify everything. LIV executives talked about billion-dollar team valuations. Bryson DeChambeau, who captains Crushers GC, said in early 2025 that selling ownership stakes was the ultimate goal, and there was keen interest from investors. The teams would become valuable assets. Players with equity would profit from franchise appreciation. The guaranteed contracts were just the first phase of a larger wealth-building strategy. But there's no timeline for when teams can sell equity. No market has developed for purchasing stakes in LIV franchises, and it's difficult to value teams in a league that loses $500 million per year with no path to profitability. Investors buy into growth stories, they don't buy into subsidies. 20 years from now, when someone asks what LIV Golf accomplished, the answer won't include innovation or competition or reimagining professional golf. The answer will be that Saudi Arabia spent multiple billions of dollars to prove you can't buy legitimacy in a sport with 150 years of institutional memory. You can rent attention, you can pay for disruption, but you can't force the establishment to care if you're not willing to play by the rules that made the sport matter. Whatever happens next, this moment won't be forgotten, and golf won't be able to pretend it didn't matter. The players who left took the money and lost the leverage. The merger that justified everything never materialized. And the financial filings proved what everyone suspected, but nobody wanted to say out loud. Brooks Koepka figured that out in December 2025. The others are still calculating, the Saudis are still writing checks, and somewhere in a UK regulatory office, next year's financial filing is already being prepared. The losses will be bigger, the revenue won't catch up, and the one sentence that destroys the entire narrative will appear again, exactly as it did in 2024. The company has received a letter of support from the Public Investment Fund, confirming access to sufficient financial resources. Without that sentence, LIV Golf doesn't exist. With that sentence, it's not a business. It's a subsidy, and subsidies end the moment the sponsor decides the return on investment isn't worth it anymore. Whether that's next year or in 10 years, the outcome is already written. LIV Golf will go down as one of the most expensive experiments in sports history, and the players who bet their legacies on Saudi money lasting forever will spend the rest of their careers explaining why they thought it would be different.